Straightforward conversations, no filters, beyond the headlines, just the facts. This is the Newsmaker. And thank you for joining NewsWatch Plus. I'm Tristan Odalo, and joining us for this exclusive interview, we have Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister, Mr. Richard Marles. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Good afternoon, Tristan. How are you?
Okay, welcome to Manila, sir. How has it been?
It's been great. Third time here in the last few years, and it's a great city, and I'm very much enjoying it.
Third time, but this time around, Deputy Prime Minister, what kind of message does your visit want to send to the Filipino people and to the Australian community?
Well, I think what we're seeing with the Australian-Philippines relationship is one which is being transformed. I mean, it's a relationship which has always had very strong people-to-people links. There's a large Filipino diaspora in Australia. There are lots of personal connections. And even in the realm of defence, there's been quite a significant history of defence training between the Australian Defence Force and the Armed Forces of the Philippines. But what we're really seeing now is a much more strategic dimension being brought to the relationship. And in that sense, it really is being transformed. You know, we are two countries, both of which share values, democracies, freedom of speech. We are committed to the rule of law at home, but committed to a rules-based system abroad. And we're watching those rules being placed under pressure here in the Indo-Pacific and Southeast Asia. And you know, that engages both the national interest of the Philippines and Australia. And so what you've now got is both countries working very closely together to assert that rules-based order. And in the process, we're really seeing our relationship blossom.
Okay, there are so many things to talk about when it comes to defense and security, but I want to go first to the signing of the intent to enhance defense cooperation that you signed together with Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro. So what this kind of agreement want to accomplish?
Well, we've got a status of forces agreement between our two countries. We have a MOU dating back to 1995, which described the kinds of cooperations that we're engaging in with defence. But the world has really changed since then, as has our defence relationship. And we really want to take that defence engagement and the agreements around that to the next level. So, you know, we are committing, for example, to meeting annually at a ministerial level around defence. But we're also looking at how we have a structured tempo of exercises and operations between our two defence forces. You know, right now we've got Exercise ALON happening here in the Philippines, and that's an exercise involving more than 3,500 personnel, most of whom are from the Philippines and Australia, a few from the US and Canada. But from an Australian point of view, it's 1,600 Australian personnel who are participating in that. That's the largest exercise we will do outside of Australia this year, and it's an example of the increased activity. We're also, you know, investing in infrastructure here now, in defence infrastructure in the Philippines, and so we're looking at how we can do that in a coordinated way, and all of that is what we seek to encompass in the Defence Cooperation Agreement that we will look to sign this time next year.
This time next year, okay. So that will be an updated MOU on defense agreement?
Yeah, but I think a much more expanded MOU, and really a defence agreement, which will guide how we move forward in terms of the defence relationship between our two countries, and one which will comprehend the strategic landscape, the challenges that we both face, but also what that means in terms of the expanded and different ways in which our defence forces are cooperating.
Yeah, because as what you've said, the security landscape is evolving and changing, and therefore like-minded partners should adjust with these changes.
Absolutely, and you know, this is a bilateral relationship, which, as I've described, as being transformed, but it's one that sits within the context of other relationships that we both have. We are, of course, two countries which have an alliance with the United States, and so as we work more closely together, we are working more closely with the US. You know, we do more with Japan. Both the Philippines and ourselves are bilaterally doing more with Japan. There's more we can do as a group, and so we're thinking about that as well. How can we work bilaterally together, but how can we work as groups of countries who share those values and essentially are seeking to do what we can to assert the rules-based order in this region.
Okay, does Australia also welcome the Philippines' move to expand its defense partnerships with other countries? For example, it's not just the Australia and the US that the Philippines has defense agreements or visiting forces agreement. We now have RAA with Japan and even VFA with New Zealand and soon to be with Canada and France. So this kind of security deals, while it is a welcome move for the Philippines, another country is reacting with the increasing number of security engagements that the Philippines is getting, and that is China, because they said that some external countries are interfering with the regional issues. How do you view those kind of perspective?
Well, there's a bit in that. I mean, firstly, we really welcome the expanding relationships that the Philippines is having with other countries. And as you go through that list of countries, what they all have in common is wanting to be in a world which is governed by rules. Countries that seek to assert the global rules-based order. We want to live in a world where disputes between nations are resolved by reference to international law, are done through negotiation. That gives countries like the Philippines and Australia agency. It's very different to a world which is governed by power and might. And so it makes sense to us that the Philippines would be expanding its relationships in the way that you've said, and actually Australia is doing exactly the same, and with many of the same countries that you mentioned. I mean, we've seen the Philippines president visit India recently. We see that as a really positive step in terms of building that relationship. I think in respect of China, this is not really, in my mind, about China. What this is about is building that world which I've described, which is based on rules, and it is about countries which believe in having a rules-based order, working together to try and assert that rules-based order, understanding that it is an order which is currently under pressure.
Your visit, Deputy Prime Minister, came at also a tense moment between Philippines and China, because if you're aware, the incidents in the West Philippine Sea last week were in two Chinese ships collided, and then they also conducted dangerous maneuvers against a Philippine aircraft. So this kind of incidents keep on happening. So how do you think the Australian government can help the Philippines into addressing this kind of aggressive behaviors?
Well, it comes back to the fundamental point. I think it's really important that countries that want to see a rules-based order being the basis upon which nations engage with each other, it's really important that what we do is that we work together and we show a unified front in terms of seeking to assert a rules-based order. And that's, I think, the most important thing that we can do. That is what we are seeking to do. We understand that in the way in which that occurs, there is going to be interactions between defence forces. What we expect in those moments is for those interactions to be safe and professional. And look, we are worried that what we've seen in recent times has not met that standard.
Okay. There's a conversation here with the Philippines and the US talking about the possibility of deploying more missile system in the country, just to assert deterrence and to make sure that the region is stable. Is Australia and the Philippines also reaching that kind of conversation, deploying, let's say, missile system in the Philippines?
Well, I mean, what we are seeking to do is really bring the best of Australian capability to the exercises that we're undertaking here and to the work that we're doing here. So, I mean, if you look at the last two iterations of Exercise ALON, we've had our largest ship come to the first iteration of Exercise ALON 2 years ago. We've got an air warfare destroyer which is participating in this exercise. We've got infantry units that are participating. We had an F-35 last time. We have F-18s and Growlers, our high-end electronic warfare fast jet. So what you can see in terms of what we are doing in the exercises that we've done and the way in which we're engaging here in the Philippines is very much bringing the best of capability that we have. And I think that is part of building fundamentally interoperability between our two countries, working out how we can best operate together. It enables us to increase the complexity of the exercises that we are undertaking. Really, this exercise ALON this year is much more complex than the one that we did 2 years ago. That's a really good thing in terms of the way in which our two defence forces operate. And what that does, it does deter conflict, but really fundamentally what it does is contribute to the stability, to the peace and stability of the region in which we both live and share.
Yeah, but you have China not recognizing, or what the Philippines said, trying to revise international law. For example, the arbitral ruling, they don't recognize it. They said it's null and void, but when it's their turn to use the international law, they flip it and use it for their advantage.
Well, again, it comes back to the point. It is right to say that the rules-based order is under pressure. We do see that in the Indo-Pacific. It's why it's really important that countries which believe in it, which see its importance in terms of providing for the peace of this region, but ultimately the peace of the world, it's really important that those countries work together to assert that rules-based order, and really that's what we are doing. And that idea, that principle, is what underpins the strategic transformation that we've seen in the Australian-Filipino defence relationship. And we are very grateful for the role that the Philippines is playing. We are very grateful for this relationship, and at the end of the day, we very much look forward to seeing the relationship go to the next level.
The Philippines and Australia signed an strategic partnership in 2023. Maybe where do you see this relationship going in the next few years? You said you've been here 3 times, and then each year there have been milestones and progress in the relations. But what is your still expectations and hope?
Yeah, look, I think I think across the entire bilateral relationship, we're seeing progress and growth, and it's really exciting. I mean, we've talked a lot about the defence side of the relationship, but there is a huge people-to-people connection between our two nations. I mentioned earlier the very, very significant Filipino diaspora in Australia, and they do actually transform the relationship from one of being friends to one of being family, literally. But we also want to build the economic relationship, the levels of investment and trade between our two countries. We see that as really important. I mean, ultimately, that economic activity is what builds prosperity in both countries, and that's what we want to be a part of the future story of the Philippines and its economic prosperity, and we really appreciate the role that the Philippines is playing in Australia as well.
Australian Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, thank you so much for your time and for granting this interview.
Pleasure. Thanks, Tristan.
Thank you
very
sir.
much.
Thank you.